Generally speaking, there are two groups of airline pilots, those who live in base and those who commute from other cities, states, or sometimes even other countries. There's a lot you need to know before you make your decision, and I can't cover everything, but I'll try to highlight some of the pros and cons so you can make the most informed decision possible. One of the most unique aspects about being an airline pilot is that you have the ability to live somewhere different than where you work. I've met pilots who commute on flights as short as 30 minutes to as long as across the country or even from an entirely different continent. There are normally a few common reasons that you'll find pilots commuting, and that's because they have a spouse or partner that has a job in a different city. Maybe they have kids that are established in school there, they have rent or have bought a house there, living costs could be lower, or maybe they just really love where they live and they never want to leave. Those are all valid reasons for commuting. Another great reason to be a commuter is that you can choose your airline's most junior base to hold a better schedule, have better seniority, or even hold a captain upgrade faster. There are, of course, downsides to commuting too. You'll find yourself losing much of your off time traveling to and from work. And if your schedule starts early or ends late, you might find yourself spending extra nights away from home. Your airline seniority plays a huge role here in bidding for commutable schedules. Keep in mind, being a commuter also adds a lot of additional living costs when you factor in food, transportation, and living arrangements in an entirely separate city than where you live. Right now I'm a commuter from Grand Forks, North Dakota to Chicago. My commute normally starts with an hour drive south to Fargo to catch one of 6 daily nonstop flights on either Envoy or United Express to Chicago O'Hare. If everything runs smoothly, my commute normally lasts about 5 hours door to door. And keep in mind, when I'm commuting, I only get a seat on the airplane if there's seats in the cabin open and available, or if there's no other pilots in line for the cockpit jump seat.
The safety card in your seat pocket explains the safety features of this airplane, including the location.
If you're deciding whether or not to commute, you should research a few critical factors. If you could imagine the most ideal commute possible, it would be one with multiple non-stop flights departing your home city to your airline's crew base about every hour throughout the day on your own airline. Now keep in mind, this definitely isn't realistic for most commuters, but use this concept as a test to see how feasible your own route will be. Having a 2+ leg commute with 2 flights or more will add a lot of uncertainty and stress into your life, plus you'll lose even more off time that you could be spending at home. Now when you're commuting on your own airline, you do get one big benefit over other pilots from other airlines, and that's priority in the cockpit jump seat, which is an extra seat that we have up front. That can be a lifesaver when there are full passengers in the back and you can't get a seat in the cabin. You also have the ability to be a jump seater on other airlines, both passenger and cargo carriers, and that's something I'll cover in another video. some airlines have commuter policies, and you should definitely research them before you start applying for jobs. For those of us at Envoy, we get 4 commuter hotels on our crew base every month to take the sting out of living arrangements. And that really comes in handy, especially when you have to commute in the night before an early start time or stay the night after a late end time of a trip. We also get 6 commuter policy exemptions every rolling 12-month period. Basically what that means is that I have to show that I have at least 2 flight options that will arrive in my base before the start time of my trip. And if I can show that I've attempted both of those options and I wasn't successful in making it to base, I can use a commuter policy exemption and the company won't hold me at fault for not making it to work. On the other hand, living in base is a lot easier to explain. For the most part, all of your airline trips will both start and finish in your crew base, which means that you can drive to work or take public transportation. This will maximize your time off spent at home during the month, and if you ever get a single day trip, you can both wake up at home and go to sleep at home. That's an opportunity for pilots that's really only afforded to those who live in their crew base. Another huge benefit is that it becomes a lot easier to pick up OT during the month to maximize your monthly earnings because you're not having to commute on either end of an OT trip that otherwise might not be available to you. The real downside to living in base is that many airlines choose crew base locations in large cities across the country. So if you're living in somewhere like Chicago or New York, your living costs might be extremely high. Choosing to commute versus living in base is a very personal, complicated choice, and there are pros and cons to each. But in the end, the decision really isn't a permanent one because depending on where you work, you'll have the ability to transfer crew bases every so often based on your airline's seniority. For most pilots, living in base is the ultimate goal, but to have flexibility both at home and to hold better seniority at work, commuting might be a really good option.